We are the co-owners of Coppermark Public Adjusters out of Oklahoma City. We work most of the Midwest and the Carolinas. And we were asked to come in today and talk about policy. And I know that's weird talking to a bunch of contractors about policy, but with all the allegations of UPPA and things running around, I think it's pertinent for you guys to know the line before you step on it or cross it. I also think it'll help you during your sales. How many of you guys do commercial? Oh, great. This is the class for you. How many of you regularly read insurance policies before you sign the contract? Okay. How many of you have gotten burned on a co-insurance penalty? Uh-oh. One. All right. So, there are different tricks and treasures in the policies that can either make you more money or hurt you really badly when it comes down to getting paid, right? There's a couple of examples we're going to go over, but then I also have actual policies that we can read. And I know that's the most boring subject on the planet, but getting in the habit of reading these policies will help you make more money and avoid those traps that I'm talking about. One of the Facebook groups that we moderate is the Accurate Property Claims Advocates. Heather's really active in this group. A lot of questions are thrown around, policy questions as well as Xactimate supplement questions. If you guys care to join, be my guest. We're in there all the time, throwing stuff back and forth. Jumping right into this, this is the kind of stuff the carriers are pulling. You guys are out in the market. You see what the carriers have been doing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the last 2 years have been more heinous than the rest. Would you agree? Yeah. So this particular claim, this adjuster sends an email that says, we also don't owe any building code / laws regulating construction, OSHA. I'll send a response regarding that and letters to buy us some time. But I'll leave the shingle thickness to you and Barry. Barry's an unlicensed consultant that we have to deal with frequently in the Midwest. I don't like Barry. But instead of saying, hey, I got hacked by Russia, disregard that. He says, my apologies, that was supposed to go to my field adjuster. I didn't mean to send the bad faith email to you. So, this actually wound up getting settled 8 months later for 3 times what the original contractor had asked for to replace the wood shake roof. How many people are dealing with engineers? All right, so in an engineering report, they're almost as important to read as the policies, because if you read them hard enough or enough times, you'll start finding golden nuggets. This guy in this particular engineering report wrote 13 different times that hail damaged this property, right? One of them I underlined because the adjuster was blowing my mind. I could not understand how she was writing what she was writing. This guy says, hailstones up to 2 inches in diameter were reported. Various studies have demonstrated that wood shakes are susceptible to damage resulting from the impact of hailstones on an order of 1.5 inches diameter or larger. Based local storm reports, it's plausible the home's roofing sustained damage from the subject storm event. The insurance company said, hey, our engineer says that hail did not damage the wood shake. Concluded the wood shake roofing was not damaged by hail. The split wood shakes throughout the insured's home is consistent with long-term deterioration and not a result of a single weather-related event. We are unable to make any payment for this claim as a loss was due entirely to wear and tear. Right there, they're quoting the policy. But obviously, they're quoting it wrong, right? Their own engineer said 13 different times in this report. This one wound up getting settled 4 months later for 4 times what the original contractor was asking for. I like wood shake, by the way.
So guys, just on that one slide alone, if you would have read the engineer's report and taken that back to the insurance adjuster, that's one of the ways not to beat us, is to make sure you're thorough in reading, the things that you get. Because if you would have read that and said, now wait a minute, and then you call the adjuster, chances are you have a good shot at settling the claim without needing us. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just have an incident where we had an engineer come out for an adjuster. They sent the engineer out first.
Right.
It's not protocol.
It's happening more and more.
Secondly, what they did was the engineer took pictures of gooseneck vents.
Okay.
Said there's no damage when there's 4 or 5 2-inch hail hits on these goosenecks. Then he took pictures of tile, said that there was no damage, but yet there were chunks of tile broken and still on the elevation. I called the inside adjuster to call them out on it and go over the report with them to get a readjust. Refusal, standing by the engineer's report. Where do you go? Because this is another standing by engineer's report when the engineer actually said there was damage.
That's a great question. There's 3 things that we like to do. First of all, we look up the engineer at the state level and find out what is his area of expertise. I want to know, is he civil? Is he electrical? Is he a computer engineer? Because I have seen computer engineers making structural opinions and trying to figure out why, okay? So I want to see what kind of background they have. Number 2, we look up to see if they're associated with the company that they're stamping the name on. A lot of times these engineers are stamping these reports and they're not authorized to be working for that particular company as far as the state's concerned. That basically invalidates the entire report. It's not valid. Not to mention the engineering board of that state wants to hear about stuff like that. So we start there. Then you get out a red pen like back in grade school and you just start chopping it up. Take out blurbs, add the photo. He says there's no damage, you put a photo next to it showing that's patently false. After the 13th or 14th false thing, the only conclusion we can make is that he's doing it on purpose, right? A professional with a license is intentionally misleading or misconstruing the situation to the insured or to the insurance company's benefit, right? That's a windfall. That's a no-no. That flies in the face of indemnification, right? So the key to that is documentation. Documentation through photographs, documentation through different scientific methods, thermal cameras, rulers, the same kind of stuff that some of these engineers do. So one of the ways that she was talking about not needing us, one of the first things we do, we check on the state licensing of the engineer. We check to see if they're valid working for that company. Then we chop up that engineering report as best we can. Does that kind of answer your question? Just writing it in a letter doesn't do enough. When you associate that with photos, are you guys using Company Cam? Anybody? Company Cam is amazing, all right? If you guys get in contact with us later on, you guys can have the first month of Company Cam on us. Company Cam will document the photo, well, you have to document the photos, but they'll hold it all in one spot for you with a photo report. You can draw circles, you can do arrows, you can do measurements, you can do notes. Those notes on those photos attached to the rebuttals to the engineer report hold a lot of weight. Because it doesn't matter whether you're a licensed engineer or not. Anybody that can read can see that somebody's lying. If they can see with their own eyes, then you're proving that the guy is intentionally falsifying basically evidence. Is the tile broken or not? A photo will show that.
So your only option is to go to a PA or attorney at that point, because they absolutely refuse. We still stand by our report.
Well, you can always go up the chain of command there. So they might refuse. There's another reason why they might be refusing. They don't have the authority to say yes, right? So a lot of these low-level guys, the only authority they have is to say no. As far as I'm concerned, that's not really dealing in good faith from the get-go, but it's reality, right? So if you're getting stalled, you need to ask for the supervisor or the supervisor's supervisor. If they don't want to give it to you, then have a homeowner write a letter in writing demanding that information. They have to give it to the policyholder. Then you go up the chain and say, you need to look at these photos I've got. Maybe this guy doesn't have the authorization to say yes, but you need to find somebody who does, because these photos are going to land you guys in some hot water. Go ahead.
Now, when you are saying that they're going to stick to their report, are you just calling and saying, hey, your engineer's report is false, there is damage, or how are you trying to combat that? How are you trying to get them?
I took the engineer's report, I just evaluated it.
Okay.
Evaluated to the policy and everything, make sure everything's in line, there's no cosmetic waiver or anything like that. And then I discussed it with the inside adjuster, who's supposedly a master adjuster, and there is nobody above him. That routine is.
Yeah.
So we managed to move it to this guy and his supervisor, but they still say the.
So did you write a letter? Did you make notes on the engineer's report and send that in?
I sent pictures of a report to the customer to submit to the Department of Financial Services in the state of Florida, essentially the insurance. I don't know if you're familiar with it
Yes.
or not, but yeah, and once you send it to them, it can get you a little bit of.
Sure, but it takes more than just calling the insurance company and say, hey, I don't agree with your engineer's report. You have to send in your letter, with your photos. You take that engineer's report and match up photo to photo, and say you've got to put more effort into it than just trying to pick up the phone and say, hey, I want you to come out here.
I don't know how there could be more effort.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, I prepared a report,
Okay.
far superior to what the engineer did,
Okay.
and annotated. You mentioned the other app, but annotates what I use to draw the arrows and symbols.
And you sent that to the insurance company also?
Send it to the customer to send with her letter dispute to the Department of Financial Services.
But that's what I'm saying. So that report never made it to the insurance company.
They went to them.
Oh, okay, that's what I was asking. Did it go to the insurance company?
So-
Okay. Okay.
In that instance, yes, the only thing you can do is hire a PA or an attorney. Look, nothing's going to work 100% of the time. Most of what we're going through up here works 75% of the time. There's still 25% of the time where you're just screwed. They're just going to dig in their heels. They've got a bigger legal budget than you do. They got a bigger legal budget than the homeowner, and sometimes stuff just goes bad. That's about 25% of the time. 75% of the time, though, you can get these things settled fairly easily when you're dealing with a reasonable person. If you're dealing with a wacko, it's not happening. Or somebody with an ego too big to admit when they're wrong, that's not happening. So just keep that in mind. Nothing's going to work 100% of the time. In that situation you're explaining, you did everything that I would have recommended to do, and at this point, you got to hire somebody, unfortunately.
Did you have a question, sir? You had your hand
I
up.
was gonna say that a lot of times I've had to deny because they weren't authorized to pay the claim, it was above what they could pay.
Right.
And so like you were saying, if you manage to get up to a supervisor, I've had to turn around because found out the guy couldn't even pay the claim.
Yeah. When that happens, you want to make the biggest stink about that possible and have the homeowner involved as well, or the policyholder, because that is not dealing in good faith and fair dealings from the get-go. If they only have authorization to deny, how is that a valid negotiation or settlement offer or a valid starting point? If you're starting from no and you're only authorized to say no, where can we go from there? We can only go to no. So I would have the policyholder raise a huge stink about that in a letter, demanding the information to the supervisor. And also, I wouldn't threaten to file a complaint with an insurance commission or the financial services division. I would do it. Have the homeowner do it, because at least it's on record.
Well, and sending the engineer out to start with is mass accurate.
Yeah.
The adjuster is sent out to identify damage, and then the engineer is sent out to qualify how that damage occurred.
Okay, well, so,
You're sending the qualifier out before you even establish the damage.
right, and we're going to be going over some policy stuff here in a minute, but that's a great point. In my opinion, and this is my opinion, and everybody's got one, engineers have no business in a hail or wind insurance claim, especially a special form policy. None. Zero. Because the policy outlines the definition of damage, right? That's been agreed to by both parties that entered into that contract, okay? What they're doing by sending out an engineer is they're trying to grade the severity of the damage. They might be trying to say how it can be repaired. They might be trying to judge whether it's cosmetic or it's functional. In either of those cases, none of it matters, because if it fits the definition of damage in the insurance policy, it's covered. So what the insurance company is trying to do is pull some smoke and mirrors, because on their end, 75% of the time, or maybe more, this is just based on my experience, I don't know about everybody in the country, but most of the homeowners will take the engineer's word and say, oh, look, an engineer said I don't have any damage, I guess we're good. And it works to their benefit.
I think part of it, like maybe what he's referring to is, the security person zone in engineering, where you've got that collusion between the insurance company.
Right.
They're saving fees by not sending out adjusters and go straight to denial for zoning.
Right. So, depending on the state, the insurance code in the state is your friend. Getting familiar with that to find out what the rules are regarding that. Is the insured entitled to an actual licensed adjuster to be there, or are they not? In some states, anybody who is assisting a licensed engineer is allowed to just go out there, which is kind of ridiculous as far as I'm concerned. But again, having the policyholder make a huge stink about that goes a long way. And saying, look, you guys send somebody that doesn't even work for your company. This guy has no ability or license to judge whether or not my policy is in effect or not, whether coverage is here, doesn't know the definition of damage in my policy. How is he even qualified to be here? The answer is he's not. I don't care how many degrees he's got. If he doesn't have an adjuster's license, he's not qualified to be there. And he's adjusting without a license. Because if he's the only one that's put eyes on that property, he's the one determining coverage. He's determining which pictures to take. He's determining which hits to measure. He's determining when it happened, where it happened. That guy is determining coverage. And that needs to be complained about to the engineering board and to the insurance commissioner's office.
We've had Ladder now do inspections for,
Same thing. Don't get me started about those guys. Same thing.
I don't know how they can get away with not actually visibly looking at the damage.
He said Ladder Now is doing the same, these ladder assist companies. The insurance companies are hiring these consultants to come out there and assist them with the ladder. But what they're doing in a lot of cases is going out by themselves. They're adjusting the claim without a license.
Well, I've seen do inspections for engineers. Like,
You're kidding.
I swear to God.
Complaints. File those complaints. So I know the complaints seem like, nothing, and you might not get a good response out of them, but at least it's recorded. And whoever is in charge of handling those complaints after the third or fourth one, legally, they are obligated to do something about it. That is literally their job, is to investigate those things. So something has to be done. The problem is the vast majority of people never complain. So these regulating bodies never know any of this stuff's going on. It's kind of our job to help them now, the way I see it, because otherwise they wouldn't. Yeah.
In regards to Ladder Now and Hancock and those other type of companies, are they, so rather I'm trying to ask, say for Nationwide or Living Mutual, for example, where they claim they're not allowed to go on top of the roofs, they're not allowed to scale it and do their own inspection. Is that completely bogus, or do they pull something?
I don't know if it's bogus or not. I do know that if they're not allowed to do the job they promised to do when they issued the policy, they should probably just pay, as far as I'm concerned.
So it is within the policy, 90%, 100% of the time here, that they're supposed to be the ones performing the full investigation?
Not necessarily. There's always convoluted language in there regarding that. Usually saying something to the effect of they can inspect it as many times or as often as they want, whenever they want, or send out their representatives to do so. They don't say licensed adjuster, they say representatives. But if you think about the definition of a representative, doesn't that mean that that person would be working for that company, if they're that company's representative? So a third-party ladder assist or a third-party engineer, and it will definitely depend on the language in that particular policy. But that's why you want to get real good at reading it. The words mean things. So, that's all it is words. And how those words are put together, hell, there's case law all over the country going back 300 years on words in these insurance policies. So I spend a lot of time on a particular word, like representative. What does that mean to a normal person, right? To me, it means somebody working for the company. You didn't do that. You didn't send out somebody working for your company. When are you going to do that? I'd like to know. I'll be here. That's why I love the policy. The policy will give you a lot of neat tips and tricks. Now, I wouldn't get up there and start arguing, guys, the policy says this, the policy says that. You do not want to do that. All the lawyers that we hang out with when we go on trips like this and go to conventions, they're always like, when I'm talking about the policy, I don't want you guys getting up there arguing policy with adjusters, okay? That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, as just a normal person in America, there's no law against reading, okay? and being educated, right? So, right, yes, exactly. So you can use things like this to your advantage. This is one of my favorites. The email we get is from an insurance adjuster. She says, for code coverage to apply, there first must be covered damage. It does not apply to undamaged areas of the home or excluded causes of loss. And then I had to show her, it says right here, they cover the remodeling, removal, or replacement of the portion of the undamaged part of the covered dwelling necessary to complete the remodeling. So she's actually saying the opposite of what the policy says, which is very strange. There's a covered loss. This is something that you guys are probably seeing more and more. They're claiming wear and tear, right? They're claiming that it happened, that wear and tear exists, marring exists. Sure, there's hail and wind, but this is old, right? This is old. So you insured an old roof. You know, I'm sorry, you underwrote an old roof. They're not allowed to apply exclusions of covered losses to a valid cause of loss. So that'll make more sense when we go over the broad forms here in a second. I just wanted to show you, and you guys have seen stuff like this, right? This is my favorite, okay? We sent in a proof of loss. I read the policy before we sent in the proof of loss. I wrote in the proof of loss, the moisture was unknown to the insured and was hidden within the wall and beneath the floor. Because it was. It absolutely was. The adjuster reads the first part of section D there and stops reading, evidently, after the words months or years. She stopped reading at the word unless, right? So they got in a lot of trouble a few months down the road when it comes to fruition that she just didn't read the rest of the paragraph. And that's how it was written in the proof of loss. So you're from Florida, how many guys are bad question. How many have seen a proof of loss or understand what a proof of loss is? All right. The proof of loss is what's required from the policyholder in the insurance policy. In a lot of these policies, it's something that they require to initiate a claim back in the old days. Now, what they use it for is just to complicate things a lot of times. But the policy language is very particular, and sometimes what somebody would write in a proof of loss could jeopardize the entire claim, right? Wording like, it's been leaking for a while. Uh-oh, what does a while mean? To somebody it might mean 1 day, to somebody else it might mean 1 year, right? So, proofs of loss are a touchy subject. That's an old class by itself. If you guys ever run across a proof of loss, you guys can call us and ask us. We review policies all the time, for free most of the time. So, the fun part, RTFP. You know what that stands for? Read the full policy, not the other F word. Read the full policy.
I'm curious about the policy itself. Before we start diving in and talking to the insurance carrier about the policies, would it be a good idea to request a copy of the certified policy before you guys dive into anything?
Not as a contractor. No, but it would be a good idea for your customer to do so.
Okay, now what if I had to assign a claim?
Then, yes.
I would be safe to.
Yeah, but I'm not a lawyer, all right? I don't see a problem with it. You might want to consult an attorney in your state. It depends on your case law. It depends on your state law, honestly. In my state, it's okay. I know that because I've been told so by attorneys. I don't know about Delaware.
What about Pennsylvania, Maryland, New Jersey?
Pennsylvania's a tough state. There's so much case law in Pennsylvania. You would have to consult an attorney just about everything, almost everything. I don't see an issue with it unless the state says no in one form or fashion. But generally, if you have, look, when in doubt, have the policyholder request these things. Have the policyholder write the demand letter. Have the policyholder request a certified copy of their policy. They have to give it to them by law in every state that I know of, except for maybe Arkansas. 3 different types of policies that are in a lot of commercial policies. Not so much in residential anymore because a lot of carriers are going away from the ISO standardized policies. But basic form is similar to broad form. These are old style policies. When basic form is shown in declarations, these are the covered causes of loss. Basic and broad form means that everything is excluded except for what we specifically list. Things like lightning, fire, windstorm and hail, riot, vandalism. In this particular one, sprinkler leakage is covered. Jeez. Sinkholes, collapses, and we can move on from here. But the thing to know is basic and broad form, everything's excluded except for what's specifically listed here, right? The vast majority of the policies that we deal with as far as residential goes, and a lot of smart commercial property owners, you got your broad form, which is just the same. Everything's excluded except for things that are specifically listed, right? Then we've got our special form. Special form policies are the vast majority of the residential policies out there, and all the good commercial policies have special form endorsements. When special form is shown in the declarations, covered causes of loss means direct physical loss unless the loss is excluded or limited in the policy. Okay? When you've got the carriers hiring these engineers or these consultants, and they're saying that's wear and tear, they're saying this is cosmetic, they're saying this is whatever this is. What they're trying to do is they're trying to apply broad form exclusions to a special form policy, okay? They're mixing up things. Used to be you could do that. You say, okay, that's not covered in the policy. Special form policy, everything's covered unless it's specifically excluded. So, you file a hail and wind claim. I'm sorry, the policyholder files a hail and wind claim, right? Hail and wind is covered. There is obvious hail and wind. You got the map to show it. You got everything going. You got fresh splatter marks. There's hail and wind here. They get up there and they say, there's wear and tear all over this roof. Wood shake specifically. Let's just say a wood shake roof, okay? There's wear and tear. There's from before. There's wear and tear. There's weathering. There's cracking. Yeah, this is just an old roof. Okay, great. What about the hail and wind? That's not a valid reason to deny a valid claim, okay? So you got to go back, and maybe not you or the policyholder, writing letters and putting stuff in writing, explaining, goes a long way. I've got a special form policy. Can you please explain to me how wear and tear on my roof basically excludes my hail damage? Have them put it in writing, because they don't want to do that, right? Special form, ordinance and law. Let's go down. We've only got 15 minutes. Time's flying by. 10 minutes. Go ahead.
Guys, we say all of this to basically drill down the fact that if you get your homeowner on board with what's going on, a lot of times if they're involved in their own claim, they can get things accomplished. And that's one of the biggest ways not to have to use us, okay? A lot of people, though, don't get their homeowners involved or don't know how to get them involved because they don't know what to tell them, what the policy says, those kind of things. So a lot of times PAs will do free claim reviews, and you and your policyholder can come sit down with one of us, and you can bring us, the policy and what's going on, and then we can tell you that argument to make, okay? So the gist of this is the policyholder is the best avenue not to need a PA, okay?
They really are. How many of you guys read declarations pages before you sign up a customer? Oh, goodness, that's amazing. All right. What about the rest of the policy? Right. But not all the time. It's like right here, in this particular claim, there's a bunch of endorsements. See the schedule of endorsements? This was 4 pages after that first deck page. So if all they hand you is that initial deck page, you're not seeing all this stuff here. Limitation on coverage for roof surfacing, and we all know what that is. That's garbage, right? Mandatory provisions, duties in the event of loss or damage, that's pretty important. But buried inside the policy, 4 pages from this one, it's a little convoluted, right? So, but on its face, what here, you've got your limits of coverage and you've got a co-insurance listed. Co-insurance, anybody? You don't want to be the contractor that calls our office saying, I've got a fantastic claim for you guys. Metal roof's busted. It's going to be $95,000 all day long. The guys, they're just giving me a hard time. I need you to come help me out. Okay, great. Where's the policy? Don't worry about the policy. Just come look at it. No, I need the policy. What's the most important part of the claims process? The most important piece of the claims process? It's the policy. Because without the policy, there's no claim. Without coverage, there's no claim, right? So a lot of times guys will get mad at me when I say I have to have that policy. Guess what the policy showed? Policy showed an 80% co-insurance with a 10% deductible. It's a $1.1 million building. You guys that have been doing this for a while, do the math in your head. 10% of 1.1 million. $95,000 roof. Bad news, right? They should never have filed that claim.
Actually, most of the folks in the room are contractors at this point. We start asking for copies of insurance policies. Are we likely to get our basic slack?
Well, like I said, there's no law against reading. What you do with it could possibly land you in some hot water. Yeah, it's yes.
Or do it,
Entitled to know, but if the customer's on your side, you're entitled.
Yeah, you don't want to be advising the customer based on their policy.
Right,
And
but
you-
look at it with them.
Yeah.
Right? Say, hey, you don't have to give me this, just,
Typically, these things happen boom overnight. I don't even know what my policy is, blah, blah, blah.
well, but they can request it from their agent and things like that. And then you guys sit together and you say, okay, this means this is how much your deductible is, this, you know. Right, and if you sit there and look at it with them, as long as you don't tell them anything incorrect, you're fine.
You don't want to sit there and spend an hour translating it for them,
Right.
because that's outside your wheelhouse, technically, license-wise. But you need to know some of this stuff for your own benefit. Right, right, because it does play a part into how you guys conduct your business. There was a hand up back there. All right.
He is correct, and especially in the state of Florida, they're becoming extremely strict on the red line between PA and consulting as a roofing company.
Right.
A roofing company, you can consult your customers on damage, and you can consult them on pricing, and provide them with an estimate.
And building code.
Yes, and if you start supplying them with policy advice or reading the policy into the customer, then you've overstepped that boundary, and it's substantial, it could be a federal felony.
Right. That's the line that you don't want to cross. You don't want to argue the policy with the insurance company. You don't want to translate it or start consulting your client about the policy. But you can have a talk with their agent and have their agent talk about the policy with them.
Had real life conversation like this, with a homeowner on the phone with a notable insurance company that shall be nameless because they're terrible.
State Farm.
Right, no, actually,
I'm just kidding.
the other one, okay, with hands people, but all that to say, I said something to, they're saying, well, they don't have ordinance in law coverage.
Okay.
To which I said, if I were with so-and-so, I'd want us to be able to see that somewhere in writing the policy. And the response from the two person was, well, we'll just send you the whole policy.
Okay.
Okay, which is okay, but now they have to read through, 15 pages of legal jargon on their own to try and figure that out.
Right.
It's really not true. And so I think it did. I mean, that one went to PA, not to.
So in that same policy, there's a state statutes clause that says, a state statutes clause. It says that if any of these policy provisions are superseded or found to be canceled out or something to that effect by state statute, the state statute would overrule it, right? Every state except for, well, no, Texas even has a state mandated building code now too. So just about every state has a state mandated building code, right? It's a state statute. Now, I have attorneys argue with me all the time, well, they mean the insurance code. They don't mean any state statute. Well, that's not what it says. It says state statutes. You don't have a state mandated building code? Yeah, you do.
Yes.
Yeah. You have a state mandated minimum building code. So it's statutory, which, I mean, and again, I'm not a lawyer, I just have to, so, yeah. Basically, the law says you have to build it to a minimum of, I think, 2015 IRC out in Colorado. Unless they adopted the 18 yet, but, yeah. So that's basically state law, right? You can't go below that. So now what? Basically, that means, to me, in my opinion, that means that every policy that's got that in there has O&L. Because you have to build it to the minimum building code required by state law.
Well, that's one thing I'm quite on State Farm in Texas on right now. They're calling up, they're calling like, I'm doing a job at Hempstead right now, and they're coming out and they're saying, oh, we call it the department that acts out of our city jurisdiction and it's not being enforced. It's an ordinance and law. I'm like, well, ordinance and law, it's not enforced, but I understand the law. So we have to build it to this. They're coming back saying the city, the municipality is not enforcing it.
Doesn't
Right.
matter.
So-
I didn't think it mattered.
The state adopts it and therefore it's considered enforced.
The municipality is allowed to be stricter, but not less strict than the state. Yeah, talk to Heather at our booth about that. She's very knowledgeable about Texas and that state mandated code in Texas. Yeah.
Anti-assignment clauses. Now, I saw one from State Farm most recently that's tried to do the AOC and they sent us back saying that the policy itself wasn't able to be assigned, therefore the assignment claim is invalid. However, I've come to understand that, judging by the shake of your head, that the understanding is there's two separate anti-assignment clauses.
Yes.
Yes.
Policies for the policy, the assignment claims for the assignment claim.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And it depends on your state. So your state case law and or state law is going to supersede that again. No contract.
State law in Delaware for AOC. Well, there is for.
Or if it's been recognized,
It previously was recognized.
then
by State Farm.
then it should be fine.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
But they're gonna try just about anything.
We're out of time. We thank you for coming. If you have other questions, please come visit us at our booth. It's booth 1109. You can also register to win a cruise. And then we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.